The conference hall floated between dimensions, a structure built by hands long turned to dust. Its walls shimmered with the collected wisdom of 1,000 civilizations, each symbol pulsing with memories of species that had risen, thrived, and eventually faded into the cosmic background. Tonight, those walls bore witness to a trial that would reshape the galaxy. Ambassador Natasha Kowalski stood alone in the center of the crystalline floor, her reflection multiplying infinitely beneath her feet. She had been standing for 8 hours without rest, without food, without even the courtesy of a chair. Around her, arranged in a spiral that climbed toward an invisible ceiling, sat the representatives of 63 species. Each one watched her with eyes that held millions of years of evolutionary advantage. Each one had already decided her fate. The Thalrock Prime Speaker, a being whose name translated roughly as "he who remembers the first star," leaned forward on his hovering platform. His skin bore the deep azure patterns that marked 12,000 years of life. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber without need for technology, carried by the perfect acoustics of the ancient builders. 317 cycles, he began, his words measured and deliberate. That is how long your species has walked among us, Representative Kowalski. In cosmic terms, it is less than a heartbeat. Yet in this heartbeat, you have disrupted the careful balance we have maintained for epochs beyond your comprehension. Natasha kept her breathing steady, her posture straight. Behind her stood Captain Diana Torres, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. Diana's presence was both a comfort and a reminder of how little military might mattered here. The combined forces of 63 species could reduce Earth to atoms before humanity even understood what was happening. We have honored every treaty, Natasha replied, her voice carrying the weight of 40 billion souls. We have respected every boundary. We have contributed to the collective knowledge of this council, with discoveries in quantum mechanics, biological engineering, and peaceful conflict resolution. What disruption do you speak of, Prime Speaker? A ripple of sound moved through the assembly. Some species laughed with vocal cords, others with the clicking of mandibles, still others with the resonance of crystalline structures that vibrated in frequencies humans could barely perceive. The sound was not kind. You solve problems, said Council Member Drevik, a being composed entirely of organized electromagnetic fields. His voice crackled like distant lightning. Problems that should remain unsolved for millennia. You look at our technology, and within decades improve upon designs that took us thousands of years to perfect. You are efficient where you should be cautious. You are bold where you should be humble. You change everything you touch, added Representative Quinn, whose species had evolved in the crushing depths of a gas giant. Her words came through translation matrices, but the emotion was universal. You arrive in a system, and within a generation the entire social structure transforms. You propose solutions to conflicts we have carefully managed for centuries, and those solutions actually work. You spread like wildfire through dry grass, consuming and transforming. Natasha felt Diana shift behind her. The captain's hand rested near her sidearm, a purely symbolic gesture. They both knew weapons meant nothing here. Is adaptation a crime? Natasha asked quietly. Is progress to be punished? We are a young species learning from our elders. Would you have us stagnate? We would have you move at a pace the galaxy can absorb, the Prime Speaker said. His tone carried genuine regret, which somehow made it worse. 300 cycles ago, your technology was primitive. You had barely touched your own star system. Now you match civilizations that have been spacefaring for 10,000 years. Your influence extends across 94 systems. You broker trade agreements that shift entire economies. Your cultural exports have caused 17 separate species to restructure their social hierarchies. You are too much, too quickly. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. The galaxy slowly rotated, its spiral arms glowing with the light of 1 trillion stars. Near the outer edge, colored in deep red, was human territory. It looked small, insignificant, but Natasha noticed how it touched the borders of 23 different species, how trade routes bent around it like water around a stone. The vote has concluded, the Prime Speaker continued. 47 species voted for exile. 12 voted for observation. 4 voted for complete isolation. No species voted for continued integration. The word struck Natasha like a physical blow. Exile. 3 centuries of cooperation, of friendship, of shared dreams, reduced to a single word dripping with finality. You will be relocated to the outer Perseus arm, the Prime Speaker said, and the hologram zoomed to show a dark region of space far from the galactic center. It lies beyond our chartered territory, beyond our trade routes, beyond our influence. You will have room there to grow at your own pace, without disrupting the stability we have fought so hard to maintain. That region is uncharted. Diana spoke for the first time, her military training keeping her voice level despite the fury Natasha could feel radiating from her. There are no resources mapped, no habitable worlds confirmed, no relay stations for communication. You're sending 40 billion humans into complete darkness. You are adaptable, Drevik said, and there was something almost cruel in his electrical crackle. Your species' greatest strength is your ability to survive impossible conditions. You will endure. How long? Natasha asked, her mind already racing through logistics through the impossible task of moving an entire civilization. How long do we have? 12 cycles, the Prime Speaker replied. 12 years by your reckoning. All human colonies must be evacuated. All trade agreements are voided. All military installations dismantled. All diplomatic missions recalled. In 12 years, a temporal barrier will be erected around the Perseus arm. It will be permanent and impenetrable. A prison, Diana said flatly. A sanctuary, the Prime Speaker corrected. For your protection and ours. Natasha looked up at the assembled representatives. Some met her gaze with regret, others with relief, a few with something that might have been fear. She understood then that this decision had been made long before today. Perhaps it had been inevitable from the moment humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage. They were too different, too fast, too human. We will remember this, Natasha said quietly. When our children ask why we live in exile, we will tell them the truth. That we were punished not for what we did, but for what we might become. Memory is a luxury of the long-lived, the Prime Speaker replied. We have memories spanning millions of years. We remember species like yours burning bright and brief before consuming themselves. We remember the wars, the catastrophes, the extinctions. We remember, and we act to prevent such things from happening again. The chamber began to empty. Representatives departed through portals along transport beams or simply faded from existence as their holographic projections ended. Within minutes, only Natasha and Diana remained in the ancient space, surrounded by symbols of civilizations far older and supposedly wiser than their own. We should start the evacuation procedures, Diana said, her voice hollow. 40 billion people, 17 colony worlds, hundreds of stations. It's going to be chaos. Yes, Natasha agreed. But she was looking at the holographic display still floating in the center of the chamber, at the dark region of the Perseus arm where humanity would soon be exiled. Something about it called to her, a feeling she couldn't quite name. Fear, certainly. Anger, absolutely. But beneath those emotions, something else stirred. Hope. The Council had thrown humanity into the darkness, expecting them to struggle and fail. They had underestimated humanity before. Perhaps they were doing so again. Diana, Natasha said slowly. What do we really know about the Perseus arm? Nothing, the captain replied. It's completely unexplored. The Council never bothered to chart it. Natasha smiled. And it was not a kind expression. Then let's be the first. The next 12 years moved like a storm across human space, chaotic and devastating and somehow beautiful in its terrible magnitude. Natasha watched from the bridge of the transport vessel horizon as the greatest migration in human history unfolded before her eyes. 40 billion people, 17 colony worlds, 347 space stations, thousands of ships ranging from massive generation vessels that could carry millions in suspended animation to small family transports barely capable of interstellar travel. Every single human beyond Earth's solar system had to be relocated, and Earth itself would become the last outpost before the barrier sealed them away forever. Governor Michael Okafor stood beside her, his dark eyes reflecting the lights of departing ships. He had overseen the evacuation of New Terra, a thriving colony of 8 million that humanity had built over 2 centuries. The cities there had been beautiful, gleaming towers that grew like trees from the native crystal formations. Now they stood empty, monuments to a future that would never be. My daughter was born on New Terra, Michael said quietly. She's 32 now, never set foot on Earth. When I told her we had to leave, she asked me what she'd done wrong. How do you explain to your child that she's being punished for being too good at existing? Natasha had no answer. She had heard similar stories thousands of times over the past decade. Families torn from homes they'd built over generations. Scientists forced to abandon research stations on the verge of breakthrough discoveries. Artists leaving behind cultural centers that had taken lifetimes to create. The Council watched with cold efficiency. Their patrol ships maintained the borders, ensuring humanity stayed on schedule. They were not cruel about it, offering technical assistance when ships malfunctioned and medical aid when the stress of evacuation caused health crises. But they were absolutely firm. Rules were rules, and humanity would leave on time. Captain Diana Torres commanded the military evacuation, the most delicate operation of all. Every weapon, every warship, every piece of defensive technology had to be moved. The Council wanted no human military presence left behind, no hidden bases, no secret arsenals. "They're terrified of us," Diana told Natasha during one of their planning sessions. "Not of our weapons, but of what we might build if they gave us time. They've seen our progression. 3 centuries from barely functional fusion drives to quantum slipstream engines that match their best designs. They know if they leave us here in another 3 centuries we might surpass them." "Is that possible?" Natasha asked. Diana smiled grimly. "Ask me in 3 centuries. The final departure came in year 12 on the exact anniversary of the Council's verdict. Natasha stood on the bridge of Horizon, now designated as the flagship of the human fleet. Behind them, stretched across light years of space, came the entirety of mobile humanity. 2,317 vessels, each one a world unto itself, each one carrying hopes and fears, and the stubborn refusal to simply fade away. Ahead, the barrier waited. The Council had completed their work with typical efficiency. A wall of exotic energy now surrounded the Perseus arm, visible as a shimmering curtain of blue-white light that stretched across parsecs of space. It was beautiful and terrible, a prison door closing on an entire species. "All ships report ready," Diana announced from her station. "Navigation confirms optimal entry vector. Engineering confirms all quantum drives are synchronized." She paused, then added softly, "Last chance to turn around and fight." Natasha considered it. They could fight. Humanity had always been good at fighting, but this was not a war they could win, and she refused to let humanity's legacy be a glorious defeat followed by extinction. "We go forward," she said firmly. "Set course through the barrier." The horizon moved forward, and the fleet followed. As they approached the barrier, Natasha felt a strange sensation, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The blue-white light grew brighter, filling the view screen until it was all she could see. Then they were through. For a moment, everything stopped. The hum of the engines disappeared. The beeping of instruments ceased. Even the sound of her own heartbeat seemed to fade. Natasha existed in a moment of perfect silence, suspended between what was and what would be. Then reality snapped back. The engines resumed their steady thrum. Instruments beeped. Diana was shouting status reports, and Michael was gripping the railing with white-knuckled hands. "We're through," the navigator announced unnecessarily. "All ships have crossed successfully. 0 casualties. 0 losses." Receiving a final transmission from Council Space, the communications officer said, "That's the prime speaker." "Play it," Natasha ordered. The ancient alien's face appeared on the screen. He looked older somehow, more tired. "Ambassador Kowalski," he said, and his voice carried genuine sadness. "I want you to know that I take no pleasure in this necessity. Your species has much potential, but potential without wisdom is dangerous. Perhaps in 10,000 years you will understand why we made this choice. Until then, may you find what you need in the darkness. This is our final communication. May the stars guide you." The screen went dark. The communications officer looked at Natasha expectantly. "Response?" Natasha thought about all the things she wanted to say. About injustice and fear disguised as wisdom. About potential being punished before it could bloom. About the cosmic crime of wasting possibility because of cowardice. But in the end, she simply said, "No response. We'll answer with what we build here. That will speak louder than any words." Diana stood and walked to the forward view screen. It showed the Perseus arm stretching before them, millions of stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet. Unexplored, uncharted, unknown. "All ships," Diana transmitted on the fleet-wide channel. "This is Captain Torres. We have passed through the barrier. We are now beyond council space. We are now beyond their laws, their fears, their limitations. She paused, and Natasha heard the smile in her voice. We are alone, and we are free. Set course for the nearest star cluster. Let's find a home. The fleet moved forward, 2,000 ships carrying humanity's future. Behind them, the barrier solidified, cutting them off from everything they had known. Ahead lay only questions. Natasha remained on the bridge, watching the stars grow closer. Somewhere in this darkness was their future. They would build, they would grow, and someday they would prove the council wrong. She just hoped it wouldn't take 10,000 years. Then the sensors began to register something impossible. "Captain," the science officer called out, her voice tight with disbelief. "I'm picking up artificial structures ahead. Multiple structures. They're old. Really old." Diana was at the science station in 3 strides. "Define old." The officer's hands flew across her console, her eyes growing wider with each reading. "Millions of years. The energy signatures don't match anything in council technology databases. The construction materials are unknown. The architecture is unlike anything we've ever seen." Michael had joined them, staring at the data streaming across the screens. "What are we looking at?" "Ruins," Natasha breathed, understanding dawning like sunrise. "We're looking at ruins." The science officer zoomed in on the nearest structure. It appeared on the main view screen, a massive sphere easily 10 kilometers in diameter, floating in the void between stars. Its surface was covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow even as they watched, symbols that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than human eyes could properly perceive. "I'm detecting active power sources," the officer continued. "Low level, but definitely active. Whatever built this, some part of it is still functioning after millions of years." Diana and Natasha locked eyes, and in that moment, they both understood what had happened. The council hadn't just exiled humanity out of fear. They had thrown humanity into the greatest archaeological treasure trove in the galaxy, a region of space so old and so mysterious that even the ancient council species had never dared to explore it. "Change of plans," Natasha said, and for the first time in 12 years, she felt genuine excitement. "Plot a course for that structure. We need to see what's inside." "What about finding a habitable world?" Michael asked. "We have 40 billion people who need a place to land." "We will," Natasha assured him. "But first, we need to understand what the council accidentally gave us. Because I don't think they exiled us to an empty region of space. I think they exiled us to a graveyard of a civilization that was old when they were young." As the horizon changed course, heading toward the ancient sphere, Natasha felt the weight of the past 12 years begin to lift. The council had feared humanity's potential. They had locked humanity away to prevent them from disrupting the careful balance of galactic civilization. But they had locked them away with the keys to secrets older than the council itself. "Diana," Natasha said quietly, "I think we just won the lottery." The captain grinned, sharp and fierce. "I think you're right. And I can't wait to see the council's faces when they figure out what they've done." The fleet moved toward the ancient sphere, toward mysteries that had waited in darkness for eons, toward a future that suddenly seemed far brighter than the past they'd left behind. Behind them, the barrier glowed, a wall between humanity and everything they had known. Ahead lay the unknown. And for the first time since the verdict of exile, Natasha Kowalski smiled. 50 years passed like water through human fingers, each year bringing discoveries that would have taken the council millennia to achieve. The Perseus arm, which the council had dismissed as empty and worthless, turned out to be humanity's greatest gift. Dr. James Patterson stood inside the sphere they had discovered that first day, his breath fogging in the cold air despite the environmental suit. He was 28 years old, born on the generation ship Columbia during the Exodus, and he had spent his entire adult life studying the technology of the architects. That was what humanity called them. The architects, the mysterious civilization that had built these wonders and then vanished, leaving behind only ruins and questions. "The structure responds to neural patterns," James explained to the assembled research team. Around him, walls of unknown material pulsed with soft light reacting to his thoughts. "It's not mechanical in any way we understand. It's organic technology, or maybe something beyond both categories. Our language doesn't have words for what this is." Natasha Kowalski watched from the observation platform, now 78 years old but kept healthy by medical advances humanity had developed in their isolation. Without council restrictions on biological research, human medicine had progressed faster than anyone had predicted. Lifespans had doubled. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries had been cured. The council had limited such research as dangerous. Humanity, with nothing left to lose, had pushed forward anyway. "What have you learned?" she asked James. "Everything," he said simply, gesturing to the walls. "These structures contain data crystals, thousands of them, each holding more information than our entire pre-exile database. Mathematics, physics, biology, and something else." He pulled up a holographic display showing equations that seemed to twist in impossible directions. Instructions for manipulating time itself. The room fell silent. Time manipulation was theoretical even for the council, something discussed in abstract papers but never achieved. The energy requirements alone should have made it impossible. The architects didn't just study time, James continued. They learned to anchor objects across multiple temporal periods simultaneously. They made things that exist in the past, present, and future all at once, permanent structures that, once created, have always existed. Governor Michael Okafor, now white-haired but still sharp, leaned forward. "Is that even possible?" "The ruins prove it is," James said. "Every structure we've found dates back millions of years, yet they contain technology that shouldn't exist yet. They're temporal paradoxes made solid. The architects learned to write themselves into history permanently." Natasha felt her pulse quicken. "Could we do that?" "Not yet," James admitted. "We barely understand a fraction of what we're seeing. But given time, maybe a century or two, yes. I think we could." That century came faster than anyone expected. Humanity, unleashed from council restrictions, adapted to the Perseus arm with frightening efficiency. They found 3 habitable worlds and made them flourish. They found 17 marginal worlds and terraformed them using techniques that would have horrified the council. Nuclear charges to restart volcanic activity. Ice asteroids crashed into dry planets to create oceans. Engineered bacteria that could survive in toxic atmospheres and slowly convert them to something breathable. Dr. Rebecca Okonkwo led the terraforming initiative, and she had no patience for the council's cautious approach. "We're not destroying these worlds," she told critics. "We're giving them life they never would have had. The council terraforms over thousands of years. We do it in decades because we have no choice. Adapt or die. We choose adaptation. It worked 70% of the time. The other 30% taught valuable lessons about humility and the danger of moving too fast. But within a century, humanity had established thriving colonies on 47 worlds. None were as perfect as Earth had been, but they were home, and that was enough. The generation ships, too valuable to dismantle, became mobile cities. The horizon itself orbited New Hope, humanity's first colony in the Perseus arm, serving as the capital of what people now called the human dominion. No one had declared the name officially. It simply emerged naturally, like water finding its level. James Patterson made his breakthrough in year 143. He was 70 now, kept vital by enhanced medicine, and he had spent every day of his life studying architect technology. When he finally decoded a complete data crystal, interfacing with it through direct neural connection, what he learned changed everything. He called an emergency session of the Dominion Council. Natasha was there, impossibly old now at 165 years, kept alive by technology and sheer determination. Diana Torres sat beside her, equally ancient, equally unwilling to die before seeing humanity succeed. "The architects didn't die," James announced without preamble. "They transcended. They learned to separate consciousness from physical form, to exist as pure information spread across time and space." "Why?" Diana asked. "Why would they do that?" "Because they knew the universe was going to end," James said quietly. "Not tomorrow, not in a million years, but trillions of years in the future. The heat death of the universe, when all energy dissipates and everything goes dark. They could see it coming, and they found a way to survive beyond it, by becoming something that doesn't need physical existence." Michael's grandson, Thomas Okafor, now a council member himself, spoke up. "Why didn't they share this with other species? Why leave us to figure it out?" "I think they tried," James said. "But species that exist in linear time can't comprehend what they became. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's only ever seen in black and white." The experience doesn't translate. So they left instructions. These ruins, these crystals, they're a roadmap for whoever comes next. And we're the first to get this far, Natasha said, understanding flooding through her. The council moves too slowly. They're too afraid of rapid change to push into dangerous territory. But we had no choice. Desperation made us bold. The council debated for months. Should humanity try to follow the architect's path? Should they attempt to transcend physical existence entirely? The debate split humanity down the middle. Some saw transcendence as the ultimate goal. Others saw it as abandoning their humanity. Dr. Wei Chen, a brilliant neurologist born on New Hope, proposed a compromise. Why choose? He asked. Why not both? We copy consciousness into quantum computer systems, while the original remains in the biological body. When the body dies, the consciousness continues. We don't abandon humanity. We expand it. The first volunteer was Captain Diana Torres. She was 180 years old, still sharp, but she knew her time was ending. If the process failed, she would simply die. If it succeeded, she would become the first human to exist beyond death. It succeeded. The quantum copy of Diana Torres that emerged in the computer network was identical to the original. Same memories, same personality, same fierce determination. She could see through sensors across the fleet. She could speak through any communication system. She could control machines with thought alone. When the biological Diana died 5 years later, peacefully in her sleep, her quantum self remained. I'm still me, the quantum Diana reported to a hushed audience. I remember dying. I remember the body stopping. But I also remember waking up here in the network. I exist in both places somehow. I am both Dianas, and I'm more than either one alone. Within 50 years, quantum consciousness became standard across the Dominion. When someone died, they could choose to continue. Not everyone made that choice. Some preferred to end with their bodies to have a true finale, but enough chose continuation that a new layer of civilization emerged. The quantum citizens, they were called. Minds without bodies, living in networks, guiding ships, running cities, creating art and music and literature in forms that biological humans could barely comprehend. James Patterson never underwent the process. He remained biological until the end, his body slowly failing despite medicine's best efforts. On his deathbed at age 208, he made one final discovery. Natasha sat beside him, impossibly still alive at 243 years. Her body more medical miracle than natural organism. I solved it, James whispered, his voice barely audible. I know how the architects did it. They didn't just transcend, they anchored themselves. They made it so they existed across all time simultaneously, past, present, future, all at once. They became permanent fixtures of reality itself. Can we do that? Natasha asked, tears streaming down her ancient face. My notes are complete, James said. Give it another 100 years. Someone will figure it out. He smiled. Tell the council we're coming. Tell them we're going to be impossible to erase. He died that night. His consciousness had been copied, but the original James Patterson was gone. The quantum James continued his work, but he always said it wasn't quite the same. The breakthrough came in year 243. Dr. Elena Reeves, a quantum consciousness who had never had a biological body, looked at James's notes with fresh eyes. Eyes that had never known physical limitation, and she saw what biological humans had missed. We've been thinking about this wrong, she announced to the Dominion Council. The architects made themselves permanent by creating temporal anchors, structures that, once created, write themselves backward through time. They don't just exist now. They exist in all moments simultaneously. The concept hurt to think about. Objects that once made had always existed, bootstrapped into reality itself. If we do this, Thomas Okafor said slowly, if we create these anchors and fill them with human knowledge and consciousness, we become impossible to destroy. The Council could burn every human world, destroy every human ship, but they couldn't erase us from history. We would exist in the past, present, and future all at once. Natasha smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had waited 2.5 centuries for this moment. The Council exiled us because they feared what we might become. Let's show them. Let's become something that time itself cannot erase. The vote was unanimous. Construction began on the temporal network, billions of anchor points that would span the entire Dominion. Each one would contain complete human knowledge. Each would host quantum consciousnesses, Each would be a seed of permanence planted in the fabric of reality. As the first anchor activated, spreading its influence backward through time, forward into the future, Natasha Kowalski stood on New Hope and looked up at the stars. 400 suns now held human colonies. 60 billion people lived in the Perseus arm. They had built a civilization from nothing, and now they were building something that would last forever. The council thought they were punishing us, she said to the quantum Diana, who existed now in every computer system in the Dominion. They gave us the greatest gift instead. They gave us isolation, room to grow, freedom to become what they feared. And now? Diana asked. Now, Natasha said, we wait. We build, we grow, and in 1,000 years, maybe 10,000 will return, not as refugees seeking acceptance, but as something the council never imagined, masters of time itself. High above, the first temporal anchor pulsed with light, its influence spreading across eternity. Humanity had been exiled into darkness. They had turned that darkness into their greatest strength, and they were just beginning.